video for? Chapter 10. We were in the 18th level of classes, and the older we got, the less trouble we got into. Or should I say, the less time we had to find trouble to get into. Now I was going to explain something in more detail than before, so if some of this sounds repetitious, I do apologize ahead of time. I had met Emmett at Valhalla, and we proceeded to ride to classes. We passed Partina and Juanita. I jumped off my steed and placed my arms around Juanita. "So, want to go out with me, do you?" I asked her, moving my eyebrows up and down. "Let her be, Lawrence," Emmett called to me. I laughed. Juanita was the daughter of the king, and she was promised to the Millennium High Priest, who was supposed to be Emmett's brother, Scott. I felt he was very too old for her. After all, Scott has been out of classes before I was transferred. Partina was her best friend, and Emmett had this thing for the both of them. Then there was this small one come running and calling out. "You always leave me," she screamed, catching up with the two of the other girls. "That would be, you are always not ready to go," Juanita said, and Partina laughed. As Emmett got down off his horse and placed his arms around the both of them, "Look, I have them both," he said. "In your dreams, Emmett Humburge." Juanita laughed, however she did not break from his hold. The younger one was Steward. She was Juanita's sister. We all walked to class together. I placed my arms around Steward. As the years passed, we all remained friends and part of Emmett and Emmy's circle in classes. Just a recap of who they are, or who we all are. There was Prince Emmett Humburge, Charles Quatines, Donnie Service, Alec Lucas, Daniel Love, Cyrus Numerous, Princess Emiletta, Partina Darlene, Princess Juanita, Princess Steward, Caroline Noman, Allison Carmen, Jennifer Tate. Carolyn was my so-called girlfriend, because Juanita refused to be, and Emiletta said we were too much like siblings. And besides, Juanita loved Emmett and was promised to the high priest, so actually King Leon would not let her be with any besides the high priest. We really all felt bad for her. However, she always said it was her destiny, and that she would be not blemished, and she would not put a blemish on her father or the kingdom of Atlantis, unlike Princess Penelope, who is in all the journals going from one fellow to the next. She was the daughter of the king of the Xandoe, and everyone really thought she needed a collar for her actions. She was also pronounced to the high priest. I remember at one of the royal gatherings she once said she was going to have her fun. Before the time came, she no longer could, because she would be a priestess. Someone forgot to inform her she should be not acting as such, for being she was a Millennium priestess. That did not seem to cross her mind. The girls of our group all hung together, and the guys did. Carolyn adored Juanita, as long as I did not look at her. Any time I looked at Juanita, or any female really, she got an attitude and would slap me. Then the argument would start. Our relationship was off and on constantly. She even got upset when I looked to the Thorntons. Once she slapped one of them just because I said she was pretty. The guys, Emmett and myself, were sitting around the picnic table at the Atlantic Garden, just talking about the class dance. "You and Carolyn going to the dance?" Emmett asked. "I don't know if she's talking to me." "We are." I had the nerve to help Tina with her folder. She dropped it in the hall yesterday, so she's not speaking to me. I told Emmett. Tina was one of the Thorntons in classes. "What is her damage, anyway? I do not see why you put up with her," Daniel had said, "because Juanita will only give E the time of day, and Emuletta says I'm her brother, or like her brother." I laughed. "You're so insane, Lawrence." "She has promised and reminds me of it every day," Emmett said. "And as for Emmy, she is like your sister." Yeah. "You know, after grad, I and Partina are getting married," Emmett said. "Really? Does she know this?" I laughed. "We have spoken of it. She thinks my father will reject because she's not of noble royal blood or family. However, I already told Father she was going to be my wife," Emmett told us. "Yeah, however, you cannot marry until she grads," Cyrus said, teasing Emmett. "That is only a year passing after I do," he told him. Emmett and I was in the Kingdom Square. He had purchased a ring for Partina. He was officially asking her to marry him. However, they still could not wed until they both were graduated. We went to Valhalla, where the girls were gathered. Emmy, Partina, Juanita, and Stockard, that is. As we walked through the hall of Valhalla, I was teasing with him. "Hey, E, what if she tells you no?" I smirked. "Why would she tell me no when she already told me yes?" he asked. "She decided she did not want to like you no more," I laughed. "Right, and Peter is going to climb the mountain in place of Scott," he told me. "Well, that would be one way to get rid of him," I laughed. "Is that not the truth?" he smirked. As we entered the gathering where they were, we walked in and Emmett went behind Stockard. She was playing a card game as always. Emmett, with a sleight of hand, took one of the cards from off the table. Then he whispered in her ear, "Hey, little bit." Stockard jumped about halfway out of her chair, and I had to laugh. "You did not scare me, E," she said, turning towards him. "If and he did not, why did you just practically jump completely out of that chair?" I asked her, still laughing. Emmett placed his hand next to her ear and snapped his fingers and then showed her the card. Meanwhile, she is giving me a bad look, or a mean look. He laughed and held it up to her. "Hey, little bit, you always keep cards in your ears?" I asked her, and she was ignoring me, and I laughed more. "Lose something, or are you cheating?" Emmett said, laughing. And so did everyone else. He handed her the card, and she glared at him. He then moved over behind Partina and kissed her neck. She smiled and looked up to him. "Why do you tease her so?" Partina laughed. "'Tis fun, and she turns shades of red," I said, and Stockard picked up an empty candy box from the table and threw it at my head. I laughed and caught it. "Thanks," I said, looking at it. "'Tis a box," I added. She huffed and turned back to her game. Then she started to place the cards on the table and stood to leave. "Little bit, stay. I want you to see this also," Emma told her. She turned to him with a raised brow. "See what? You flirt with my sister, her flirt back, and you kiss on Partina and law the rules. Well, you do not flirt with me. However, everyone else in the room," she whined, and I laughed more. "I was so flirting with you," he protested. "Besides, I am not flirting with Law," he added, which I was more than glad for that. It would have just been awkward if he had. "Was not. You just stole my card out of my hand and then accused me of cheating," she told him. "And besides, Law flirts with himself," she said, upset with us, and I could not cease laughing. "I pulled your card out of your ear, just like I am about to pull this out of Partina's," he said. He reached behind her ear and with a snap of his fingers pulled a ring out and held it up to her. It was a diamond and sapphire. He then went down to one knee and taking her hand offered it up to her. "Partina, with the witnesses of your best friends, would you honor me by accepting to be my companion and join with me after your graduation year?" He said, slipping the ring on her hand. She looked to her hand and started to cry as he took her hand and kissed it. I stood back watching them and smiled. Juanita had a sad smile. She was happy for her best friend, yet she loved Emmett also. "What will your father say? I am not royalty," she said, smiling. "You will be once you mate with me," he told her and stood up. She stood and placed her arms around his neck and kissed him and started saying yes over and over about 1,000,000 times. Chapter 11. We were in the indoor rec area at the education center during our lunch hour. We were in the 19th level. Emmett and I were playing table ball. Table ball is like pool on the world. We also call it 8-ball. We were having fun. That was until Carol wanted to show her arse. One of the dynasts had came over and brought me a soda. I smiled and thanked her for it. She returned the smile, and that was all there was to it, or so I thought. Then we heard a cry of pain and Carol yell. I turned about and saw Carol with the Dinah, and she was striking out at the poor girl with a whip. I snapped. I could not take this any longer. The woman was insane. I walked over to her and jerked the whip from her hand and stood between her and the girl. Emmett rushed over and took the girl in his arms. "Give me that back. She needs to learn her place," Carol snarled at me. "What would be her place that she needs to learn, Caroline?" I asked, not returning the whip to her. "She has no reason to be over there where the free are," she spitefully said. "You mean over where I was," I corrected her. She gave me a mean look and I just made a laugh. "Caroline, it is over. No more dance. And I do not want to be with you or around you," I told her. "You cannot break up with me. Not me," she told me. "I am certain that is what I just did," I told her. She slapped me across the face. I took a deep breath as she was free to do that, and I turned to move to Emmett and the girls. "Prince Lawrence Damera, I will never speak to you again if you do this to me," She cried out and threw something at me, and I ducked it. It crashed into the wall. I think it was a glass. "So be it," I replied, and I with Emmett and the others left the area, leaving her mad self behind. We had 3-year cycles left of classes, and they flew by. Carol ignored me, or she told everyone she was ignoring me. She did not speak to me, however she left me messages by way of my desk and others. The scroll messages I would throw or toss away. The vocal ones, I would tell them no. It was always the same. She wanted to talk and meet me somewhere. I was done with her. She was way too spoiled for me to deal with. She was free, and I really could not do anything to her besides walk away. I was sitting in my room reading when a knock came at my door. Then it opened, and my father popped his head in. "Busy?" he asked. "Not truly. What's up?" I replied. "We have to talk about something," he told me. "I did not do it, and if I did do it, I promise you it was the son of our high priest's fault." I smirked. He returned my smirk. "That I have no doubt in," he chuckled. "You and Emmett can get yourselves into a mess, and all your friends, and that is without trying. However, son, this has to do with the circles. You are no longer in classes. What are you going to do? The youth circle is no longer valid." He told me, as if I did not know this, as the youth circle was only for the education center. "Yeah, want me to petition for this kingdom circle?" I asked, as I was not sure where my father was going with this. "No, not at all. However, Lewis is going to want to talk to you. I was just giving you a fair warning. Now, if you do not want to accept his offer, you are under no obligation to do so," he told me. I sat on my bed and looked to him and laughed. "Dad, I will be with Emmett. As the high priest wishes, I will comply. You know how I've felt an obligation to the kid since we've met," I told my father. "Yes, I know. You and Emmett are close, and I know Lewis appreciates the time you put in with his youngest son. Daring son, that is. We only have roughly 18-year cycles before Scott climbs the mountain, and Lewis's range ends. He will need good men for the Millennium Circle. Emmett will be part of that circle. I figured you would want to be the one besides him," he told me. "Yes, we really have not spoken about it. However, that is true," I told my father. "Other than Emmett wanting to climb that mountain in place of Scott," I added. "Emmett is very young and naive. Lewis has said it should be Scott," my father said. "Yes, I know, Dad. However, when he puts his mind to something, he does not stray from it," I told him. "We will just wait and see, in 8 passings of the full year's cycle, as to what will happen. One of Lewis's sons need to climb that mountain," my dad said, patting me on the back and standing to leave my room. That following year, Emmett and Partina, Juanita, and I stood besides them as witnesses as they married. You could tell Juanita's heart was breaking. She really loved Emmett. However, she was promised to the high priest, and she had studied to be the high priestess all her life, and she would be the first to wed the Millennium high priest. We were in the ending time of the rotation, which meant in the second part of the ending year of 89, Scott would climb Odin's mountain, retrieve the scepter, and return. Then he would have 10 full-year cycles to take 7 wives, one from each of the 7 kingdoms, or one to represent each of the 7 kingdoms. Then at the end of 99, he would be announced high priest. Then 5 years following that, Lewis and his kings would venture up Odin's mountain to rest, leaving the Sultan to anew. Only thing was that Scott did not want to climb that mountain. He did not want to be high priest. He loved the people. He just did not want to guide them and have 7 wives. And he also said there was a chance he would not return. Chapter 12. I was sitting in the sitting room at my father's cottage reading the purchase ads in the Atlantic Journal when Emmett came into the room. "Hey, Law, what you reading?" he said, coming in and sat on the sofa with me. "The Journal," I told him. "Really? That is what that paper is," he laughed. "E, what do you want?" I said, looking up in the paper at him. "Nothing, actually. Father said to tell you he wants to see you, if by chance I ran into you, so I came over to run into you." He chuckled. "What does he want? Besides, I do not think I have done anything as of yet, or have I?" I asked him. He laughed. "I truly do not know, and I did not ask. And no, I'm not going back to Valhalla and ask what he wants to come back and tell you," he said. "Well, damn, E. What a good friend you turn out to be," I replied. "Hey, look at this," I told him as I saw the ad of the Atlantis Viking Lodge. "Why is it up for purchase?" I asked Emmett. "Tony Delerita is moving somewhere. I forgot what Father said. Thinking about seeing if your father will get it for you," he said, looking to me strangely. "Was thinking about it," I replied, and folded the journal and set it down. "Let me get dressed and I'll go with you and see what your father wants," I told him, and moved out of the room. I dressed and went to Valhalla with E to where Lewis and Vivian were in the sunroom. We walked in and I bowed, as so did Emmett. "Rise, gentlemen," Lewis said. We stood and moved over to the table with him, where he and Vivian had sat. "Lawrence, your father and I was speaking of the circle, and he thinks it would be good to offer you a position in the palace circle. What are your thoughts on this?" Lewis had asked. "As you wish, Your Excellency," I replied. "All right, well, until the form of the Millennium Circle, you will be a commander of the guard circle for the Sultan. That way you will be next to Emmett, where I know you would rather serve," he informed me. "My thanks, Your Excellency." I smiled. "Yes. Now I will pay you to get in trouble with my son," he said, and Vivian laughed. "At least I am not gyrating across the stage," Emmett smirked. Lewis began to laugh harder. "Yes, your brothers do that more than quite well." Alright, the following week, my father helped me to purchase the Viking Lodge I wanted, and I moved out of my father's cottage, which was a good thing, as I wanted my own place. The following year, I had everything the way I wanted it. However, I needed to hire some others to assist me. Emmett, Cyrus, Daniel were in my office with me. We were just wasting time, I guess you could say. Cyrus, how about assisting me with this lodge? I can give you a room and you can move in here and have your own compartment, I asked him. Sure. When do I start, boss? He laughed. As soon as you get moved in, I told him. I need a job also. Want to hire me? Daniel spoke up and I smirked. All right, same deal. I gave Cyrus, I told him. Then I looked at Emmett, just for the fun of it. Hey, E, want a job also? I asked him with a smirk. You done gone lost your mind. Cyrus, Daniel, your first assignment is to locate Law's mind, he said, and we all laughed. Hey, you know the Millennium is coming up soon, Emmett said, for it seemed no reason, and really out of the blue. All right, so Scott will climb the mountain, receive the sector, return, and marry Juanita, I said. No, Scott still says he's not climbing that mountain. I was thinking about climbing it, 'cause none of the others want to, and Father said he does not want to serve another term, and one of us has to once the sector returns to the mountain, Emmett said. You still on this? Really? What does Lewis say about it? I asked curiously. Oh, I have not said anything to him since the first time I mentioned it, and he said no. Yet I was just thinking more about it, really, he said. You only want to marry Juanita is all, I laughed. You might be right on that one. Partina and her are so close you might as well live at Damera as it is. I was sitting in my office. Emmett came into my office and smiled like a bird-fed cat, looking all happy. What did you do? I asked him. Nothing. However, Partina transferred a little boy. He said, all proud. Congrats. You are now a father. Better you than me. I already have to keep up with you. I smirked. Ha ha, he replied. That was the start of Emmett having children, and I do not think he knew what cease meant. With the passing of the years, Emmett had a child every year's cycle, which was odd, as normally children are not born to anyone in such a manner. One per full year cycle, maybe. Then even that was pushing it. However, it seemed Partina was always with child. As the years passed, it came closer to the Millennium cycle, and as it did, everyone went crazy. I had hired our other friends, Maverick, Donnie, and Charlie. Now, so we all were living at the Viking Lodge, besides Emmett and Emmy, that was. I was sitting in my office working on some contracts I had for Thornton training when my door opened. I looked up at the door, as people did not usually just enter my office. I watched as Emmett came in, moved to the bar, fixed him a drink, then moved to sit beside my desk. He looked as if he'd not really slept. He put the glass to his head. What is amiss? I asked. Miss? A lot of miss. Father is fighting with Danny, or more so, Danny's fighting with Father. Danny has been at his estate with Patsy. Dad wants him at Damera. Danny will not come to Damera without Patsy. Danny asked Dad to marry Patsy. Dad said no, because she has a brand. It is just a mess. I came here to escape, he told me, and I chuckled. Everything else good? I asked. I am just waiting for the next blow-up Dad has. He sighed and took a drink. He sat there for a while, then spoke again. Also, Dad is not allowing them to tour. So they are going to do a concert here in Atlantis every 6th day. They have one coming up. Want to go with us, you and Cyrus? He asked. Sure. I think that's part of my job. I chuckled. He just gave me a look. Okay, we'll meet you here and we just walk over there, I asked him. Sounds good to me, he said, as the Viking Lodge was near the Kingdom Square. It was the day of the concert, and Emmett and Partina and Juanita and the two Otis, Carradine, and Barbarana came to the lodge. Cyrus and I were waiting for them on the porch as they came from the carriage. We stepped out to meet them. We then started to walk down the street, past the Thornton Market, and would walk across to the concert hall. As we passed, Cyrus stopped and called to me. Hey, Law, did you take a look at the Thorntons they got up on the block for purchase? He asked. Mysteriously, it would seem. No, we are going to the concert, not a Thornton sale, I told him. Come along, boss, and see what I see, he said, coming up behind me, placing his hands on each side of my shoulder and backing me up, then turning me around to face the Thornton block. And up on the platform was my old girlfriend, Miss Slapper herself, Lady Caroline Noman. Hey, look, it's Carol, Emmett said, all amused. Wonder what she is doing up there, Partina remarked. She more or less slapped the wrong person and found herself charged with decree of battery, Juanita laughed. I broke from Cyrus and moved up on the Thornton yard. I take it we are going to be late for the concert, Emmett smirked as he followed me. Hey, you all, this not the way to Uncle Danny, Carradine spoke up. We're going to buy a dinah first, Barbara said. Why? Carradine asked as we moved on into the yard, and I listened to the bidding of the girls, or the girl on the platform. Come on now, 1 gold for this lovely girl, fresh to her rose brand, and pure as the rose is fresh, the conductor called out. As I heard him say rose, I looked to the blindfolded girl. I then looked at him and smirked. What are you up to, Lawrence Damera? Or Damere, he asked. Owning Miss High and Mighty herself, I replied. 1 diamond, I called out. All went quiet. Not another bid was heard, as the conductor looked to me. Your Highness, that is way too much for this miserable girl, the conductor seemed to be informing me. You are turning down coin, Emmett laughed. It stands 1 diamond. Have the miserable girl, as you say, delivered to the lodge, I told him, and we turned to go to the concert that the kids were now complaining and whining about missing. We did not miss the concert. We got there just in time. Afterwards, Adam came over to me. He was Maverick's younger brother. Maverick was one of my guards and one of my friends from classes. Hey, I saw in the journal you are in need of guards. How about I take one of those positions, he said. What is wrong? Being a starving singer is not going good enough for you? Father keeps on me saying I will never amount to nothing besides a noisemaker, and I still live under his roof, he said. You take position at the lodge, and I'll expect you to live in one of the compartments, I told him. Hey, even better. What about the concerts and all? He asked. Up to you and the group. Report to the lodge tomorrow and we will speak more on it, I told him. We then left and went back to the lodge. Emmett and the others remained at the concert hall with his brothers. That was the only time I really would leave him alone, he was with his brothers. As I entered the hall of the lodge, I looked to Maverick. My new girl arrived, I asked him. Yes. Wish her in your study or office, he smirked. Study. I will take a shower, then I will see her. Has she been fed as of yet? No, I was waiting for you. He smiled. Good. See, she is fed the Thornton porridge and water. Until further notice, I told him. All right, and her duty to your office, he asked. Lord, no. Her duty will be to the kitchen. Also, after tonight, she will be placed in a used room, I informed him. She is not going to be happy, Dinah. He laughed. I smirked, and then laughed with him, and went up to my chambers. Maverick was the lodge master. He would make sure all in the lodge did as I wished them to. I took a shower, very proud of myself. Will Carolyn not be surprised? Last thing she said to me was that she would never speak to me again. I laughed harder at my thoughts as I placed the bathrobe on and went through my chambers to my study, and there she held at the foot of Maverick, as he sat on the couch waiting me. Yes, I know, this seems to be spiteful. Perhaps at first it was, even somewhat childish. Greetings, girl, I said sternly to her. Greetings, master, she replied. She was still with the blindfold on, and it seemed she did not recognize my voice. This was a good thing, and could be to my advantage. How much training, if any, have you had? I asked her. Basics, master, she replied. I see. Tell me, how you became to be with that Rose Brown, I said to her. I owed a bank debt, and failed on the agreement. I was to serve for the passing of 2 full year cycles. I tried to escape the service, and received the Lily Brand, then was sold to the Parliament. I then attempted again to leave, and received the Rose Brand, and given to the Thornton market for sale, she said with a hint of sorrow in her voice, as if she wanted to cry. How long ago was that? I asked. It was all in 1 year, full year cycle, master, she replied. You are a stupid girl. Then are you not? I asked her. I did not want to be a Dinah, she said, starting to cry. I am sure you did not. However, you are now. I went over and stood before her. Stand, Dinah, I told her. She stood up obediently. I felt somewhat regretful for her. I was not sure as to why. I looked to Maverick. I will take her from here. Send her meal to my chamber. I will personally train this one. As you say, boss, he said cheerfully, and moved out of the door with a smile as if he knew something I didn't. Come along, Dinah, I said, taking her by the upper part of her arm and leading her into my chambers. As we entered, I led her to the bed and let go of her arm. Heel, I told her, and she complied obediently. May a Dinah speak? She asked. Yes, you may, I told her. What will master do with a Dinah? She asked me. Let's see. First I will train you to the platinum collar of a courtesan. Then you will be placed in the kitchen for your duty and serve the guards and the men of my lodge, I informed her. I could tell she started to cry. You do not like what you do not like what I have just informed you of, do you, Dinah? I asked her. I am Rose Brandon. I have no choice, she said, crying. And this is true. You have no choice. Nor did you before you were even Lily branded. Guess you are not quick learner. I would advise you to start being one. Try and escape from me, and I will see you are destroyed. Do I make myself clear, Dinah? I said to her. Yes, master, she replied. 'Tis my master, I then informed her, as I took a courtesan whip from the wall. Kneel, girl, you will now be introduced to your whip. I watched as she crossed her arms before her and placed her head to the floor. It seemed that little Miss Slapper was trained somewhat. This I found pleasing. I struck her 3 times with the whip. She cried out with each strike. Heel, girl, I then ordered her, and watched as she obeyed. Maverick came in with her porridge and milk, placing it on the table. He then left back out. I replaced the whip and placed the bowl on the floor before her. You have 2 bowls before you. One is your meal, the other is milk. You will on your hands and knees, using only your mouth, eat, I told her. She was very obedient and obeyed without protest. After she had eaten, I then had her to get up on the bed and contract, then placed her body in need, awakening the tension up inside. I took use of her as she cried in protest, and I could sense her knowing she would be a used girl, and she was right. Afterwards, I placed her in the holding cage in the corner of my chambers. I listened as she cried herself to sleep. Chapter 13. It was the next morning. I woke and dressed and went into the study, contacting Emmett to see what he had planned on doing, as it was the 7th day of the week. He was not planning on even leaving the palace, so I decided to torment the slapper. I moved back into my chamber and saw she was setting up. I unlocked the cage and ordered her to crawl out. She came out and heeled. Stand, I told her. She did, so I then guided her into the next room, which was my study. Heel, I then told her. Master, may a Dinah speak? You are my Dinah. You will address yourself as such. Also, I am your master, and you will address me as such. Now you may ask again, I told her. My master, may your Dinah speak? She then asked correctly. Yes, you may, I replied. Master, may your Dinah know who her master is? She asked. You wish to see your owner, girl? I asked with a smile on my face. Yes, my master, please, she said. Very well, you may remove the blindfold, I told her. I watched as she reached and unfastened the restrainer. As she looked up to me, I smiled to her. Her face lit up, and for a reason I had none of, she actually stood and hurried over to me. Law, it is you. Oh, Law, she said, placing her arms around my neck. Thank you for buying me. You are going to have me serve you. I will be your courtesan. She rambled off. I was not sure if she had forgotten what I told her the night before, or if she had just plainly lost her mind. Is your dramatic scene over with now? I asked her. She went to kiss me, and I pulled her back from me. Heel, I told her. No, Law, please. You have had your fun, please, she said. I really did not know what she was thinking. I backhanded her to the floor. She looked stunned up at me. Now, heel, girl, I told her. I believe the last time we spoke, you slapped me and said you would never speak to me again. Now I informed you last night what my intentions would be with you, I told her. I watched as she slowly went to her knees at my feet and started to cry. I was upset with you. I really did not mean it, she cried. You have said my name and forgotten your language and your place. If by chance you do it again, you will receive your whip. Let it not happen again. I reached to the colocom and pushed the interior tab. Maverick, come to my study. I called, then leaned on my desk, and she healed there with the tears streaming down her face. I no longer felt regretful for her. I could not explain as to why this was. Maverick came in and looked from me to her. What is up? He asked. Are you ready for this girl? I asked him. Whenever you wish to release her to me. She will answer to the name Carol. Take her and place her to her duty, I told Maverick. Maverick went over and took her by the arm and led her out of my office. I had the North Viking Lodge in Atlantis. It was not the largest, however, it was not the smallest. I had 15 courtesans that took care of the lodge and an estate of 132 Thordens, both male and female. I bought, trained, and sold Thordens. Also managed the Thordens for the forfeitures for the king. Carolyn had always been very good at behaving herself. She had been here at the lodge in service for about 2 months. She had requested audience with me, and I granted it to her. When she entered, she healed, and I looked to her from my desk. Yes, Dinah. What do you want? I asked. My master, your Dinah asked master to allow her to serve him, and not in the kitchen, she said. I looked to her and started to laugh. Now, why would I consider that? I asked her. Please, master, my master, if your Dinah must serve, please allow your Dinah to serve my master, she pleaded. No. Return to the kitchen, girl, I told her. Please, my master, your Dinah has the right to beg, giving her master a choice to train or field his Dinah. If my master keeps insisting on your Dinah in the kitchen, then your Dinah will do that, she arrogantly informed me. I stood reaching behind my desk for the courtesan whip, then swung it, smacking her on the back. You need not beg for the field. Only ask for it. So if it is my field you would rather serve in, then so be it, I informed her. She screamed and started to cry. It is not the field, it is you I wish to serve, she said. I reached down and pulled her up by her hair and held her facing me. If you give me a choice to train or field you, the field is where you will find your arse. Stupid girl. I threw her to the door. Return to the kitchen, Dinah. She cried out and left my office. I returned to my desk, sitting there thinking about her, remembering how cruel the woman was to some of the Thordens in classes, how she treated all that came in contact with, as if she was the queen of the pack, and all were her servants. Looking back, I really could not remember what made me even like her, other than Emmy insisting me to take her to the dances. Also, when we first started dating, she was very sweet, or made it out to be that she was. She would say she would only need to ask her father and she would get whatever she wanted. Makes one wonder where her father was now. Adam came into the office, breaking my strand of thought. "Hey, Law, I have a question," he had said as he entered. I looked up to him and shook my head. "What question, and where did you get it?" I asked him. He laughed. "The 5 Thorntons delivered to the lodge. There are 2 Rose, 2 Lily, and also a dingo. Are you just training them for sale or block or what? I only have a report on one of them," he explained to me. "Yes, Sophia has the files on all 5. She was to transfer them to you on the Tricon. She may not have had time to do it as of yet. Check with her," I told him. "All right. I have a concert in Brazil. Is it all right if I take Tina with me?" he asked. Tina was one of my lead courtesans of the lodge. I smiled at him. "Yes, you may take her." "When are you leaving?" I asked him as Emmett came into the office and looked from him to me, then over to the bar, fixing him a drink and sitting down. "We leave in the first day of next week and should return within 3, he told me. "All right, make sure Paul and the others know what to do with the 5. I will place a hold on all others until you return," I told him. "Will do," he said, then looked to E. "Hey, E, bye, E," he then said and left back out. I looked to Emmett. "Hey, what brings you here?" I asked him. "Father sent a message to you. You get it?" he asked. "Would depend on what the message was, if I got it or not," I told him. "It is a circle meeting. He wants the Magna team to meet him in the constellation room of Valhalla, passing of 3 days, he informed me. "Then no, I did not get it," I told him. Alright, time to make a detour on reminiscing my life and explain something here. The circles are like the police, special services, army, and whatnot that the world has. We do not have police, we have guards. Each circle has 3 teams, the Magna, Jewel, and Mystic. Each team had 7 stations. Each station had a minimum of 3 officers. Alright, now an officer is the ranking member. The guard is below the officer. I know that is kind of confusing. However, this is the best I can muster to explain. Each team of the circle had 21 officers and a number of guards, which depends on who was needed or the guards that were needed. There are basic circles. The common circles are the Sultan, Royal, King, or Count, and then Kingdom or Village. Then, the last 10 years of the Millennium, there was a Millennium Circle, which was led by the Millennium High Priest. I do hope I explained that correctly. If not, I do apologize.